Good morning and welcome to the latest installment of Yes or No, this online roundtable discussion hosted by Youth Capital in the run-up to the 2024 general elections. Youth Capital, of course, an organization advocating for the continuation of the Youth Employment Service in the presidency that provides a first employment opportunity to thousands of young South Africans. At the moment, it has funding, but not for the foreseeable future. In essence, we don't know what is going to happen to the Youth Employment Service, and thus Youth Capital is advocating for its continuation past the 2024 local, provincial and national elections, as well as into the foreseeable future, as studies have clearly shown that providing a first employment opportunity to young South Africans provides them the opportunity for further employment into their 20s as well as their 30s, and providing that first employment opportunity really does increase their chances of finding their feet in a future career. So for today's edition, we're joined by someone that needs little to no introduction. We're talking about social protection. And to set the scene, we're joined by an icon in South Africa, really, the former public protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela. Thank you very much for your time, ma'am. A brief greeting to you here before we introduce the other panelists.
Thank you, Nicholas, for this privilege to be here, and greetings to all of the esteemed members of political parties and other colleagues.
Of course, we are joined by several members of political parties that are vying for your votes in the run-up to the 2024 election that's taking place on the 29th of May. We're joined very happily for the first time by an ANC representative, the Wits SASCO chairperson, Ntshatjya Tambo Volsake is joining us. Thank you very much for your time. We're also joined by Nicholas Nyati, the DA Federal Youth Chairperson. We're joined by Ponso Hlongwane from the EFF Student Command. Eugene Botha from the Patriotic Alliance is also joining us, as well as Katie Motti from the African Transformation Movement and Andile Jabavu from the United Democratic Movement. Thank you very, very much for all of your respective times, and thank you very much for joining us. We are on the clock, Advocate Madonsela, so I'm going to ask you to please set the scene for us and talk to us about your thoughts on what social protection means really in 2024 in the world's most unequal society.
Thank you. Okay, firstly, thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, colleagues. At about 9.1 million out of 27 million, young people feature among the largest demographic groups that will influence the outcome of South Africa's 7th national democratic elections on the 30th of May 2024. One of the key challenges young people have is youth unemployment. And a related question is the right to social protection. Dear members of political parties, I just quickly looked at the World Happiness Report. It places Finland at number 1 and South Africa at number 87. And South African youth at number 87. So South Africa's young people are among the least happiest young people in the world. And you'll ask me, what does this have to do with youth unemployment? And what does this have to do with social protection? Number one, there is an indication that when people are happy, they are more productive. But even more important, in a fractured world, in a state of perpetual unpeace that we find ourselves in as a country and as a world, neuroscientists and psychologists tell us happy people do not hurt people, whilst hurt people hurt people. So Stats South Africa's latest data puts youth unemployment in South Africa at about 65%. This is when we are adding the not in employment, education, or training needs. That means more than 1 in 2 young people you see every day is likely to be unemployed. Better put, more or less 2 out of 3 young people you meet will be unemployed. And the question is there a duty on government to provide social assistance? I recently had a privilege to present on young people and social assistance at an event organized by Youth Capital. And I answered this in the affirmative. Section 27 is clear about the duty of the state to assist everyone to earn their own income, and when they're not able to earn their own income, to provide them with income assistance. Article 25 and Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights further reinforce the right to social assistance. ILO conventions, which South Africa has signed without reservations, also reinforce the duty to provide social assistance. As we speak right now, some of that social assistance is being provided. Of course, we know when it comes to income security that there's the SRD grant, which is currently 350, which was the cost of a food hamper in 2020. And it has not increased to be adjusted to the price of a food hamper. But that's not the most important thing that I want to talk to you about today. As my colleague Nicholas has stated, we're looking at the assistance that makes young people to be productive. In other words, assist them to be gainfully employed. Projects that do that at this stage include the Presidential Youth Employment Service, and initiatives such as Youth at Work. I know, for example, as a public protector, as a previous public protector, that bringing young people into the pipeline of employment makes them part of the highway of employability. As public protector, we created 2 categories that employed young people. The first one was a trainee investigator. The second one was an assistant investigator. And they were taken up by other institutions as fast as we developed them. Because once they're into the highway of employability, firstly, their social capital is expanded. And secondly, their skills are expanded. A lot of young people are unemployed, but there's also a race and gender dimension to it. There's also a rural and urban divide to it. Therefore, these programs also bridge the inequality gap, which is primarily a legacy of our unjust past. Now, the question that has been raised by Youth Capital is that if it's a constitutional duty and an international human rights law duty to provide social assistance to young people, which includes making it easy for them to be gainfully employed, is this a priority among political parties? Is this reflected in political party manifestos? I know that a lot of political parties talk about going to create jobs, but the question is more than that. A lot of the jobs that exist require somebody to have experience. And projects such as Youth at Work or the Presidential Youth Service, make it possible for young people to enter that highway of employability without skills. Straight from university, they are employed as interns in related positions. Will this continue?
We can
with
only hope that it will
new-
continue, Advocate Madonsela. I'm sorry to butt in, but this is an opportune moment for us to air a question that was put forward by one of our viewers. She asks you, Professor Madonsela, whether or not the Constitution or indeed laws in South Africa are a hindrance to employing young people. We know that there was a brouhaha about work experience being a requisite when it comes to the employability of anybody, never mind just young people. If I could please, as a closing remark from you, get an answer to that question, whether you believe that the Constitution or indeed any law in South Africa is an impediment when it comes to the employment of young people with this requisite of work experience.
Well, the Constitution is clearly not a hindrance to the employment of young people or anyone. The Constitution provides for establishing a new society that is based on, among other things, social justice, which is fairness to all. And fairness to all is obviously including fairness to young people. And there's no constitutional requirement for anybody to have experience before they have their first job. However, some provisions in government and in the private sector are made that for people to get into certain jobs, they must have requisite experience. And I want to believe that Youth Capital says that gap can be bridged through providing internships. But there should be jobs where you enter without any experience at all, and you're given on-the-job training. For example, with lawyers, you enter as a candidate attorney, and you're given on-the-job training. Trainee investigators, we did the same as the perpetrator. The NPA is a similar program where people come in as trainees, and the industry can do the same thing. But things like internships and job shadowing are crucial to give young people a break and a bridge into these spaces. Otherwise, we get a hopeless brigade of young people, an unhappy brigade of young people, and diminish social capital in our country. And as Joseph Stiglitz said in 2002, a country that is low on social capital will be high on crime. And when it's high on crime, security and stability are threatened, and you get human rights and democracy backsliding. And the only winners in that particular case are demagogues and kleptocrats. Thank you.
Advocate Thuli Madonsela, thank you very much for setting the scene so well for us during this discussion. If you've just joined us, this is the Yes or No online roundtable discussion hosted by myself, Nicolaas Bauer. We're delving into the approaches to social protection by the political parties that are vying for your votes as a young person come May 29th. I'm not alone. I'm with the Youth Capital youth activist, Kananelo Kwetsa. I didn't get a chance to introduce her earlier on when we started this episode, but she'll, of course, be posing a question to all of the political parties that have joined us today. I've introduced everybody except for Ramla Malchas. She is, of course, representing Al Jamar. She has joined us now, and we'll get to Ramla in a moment or so. But in order of representation in Parliament, the opening statement from the political parties that join us today, we're going to start with the ANC representative. By extension, they represent the ANC with SASCO, the South African Students' Congress, essentially being associated with the African National Congress, the governing party. Nchacha Tambo Volsaka joining us now. Sir, thank you very much for your time. If you could please give us your response in terms of what is SASCO and by extension the ANC's approach to social protection.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. So basically, we need to understand something, right? With the ANC has actually been able to ensure that the new entry graduates without experience are actually being given the chance to be employed, because it is really unfair for us to expect new graduates to get employed without them having the experience. So basically, the ANC has actually been able to channel that approach to say that those new entry graduates should be allowed to enter those job spaces without them having experience, because it does not make sense for them to actually have experience. So we then need to understand what that approach means for South Africans. It then means that the ANC has then one role. After declaring that statement, we have one role as the ANC to ensure that we are now able to actually conduct. I'm not sure if you're speaking, Nicholas.
No, go right ahead. Please. You
Okay.
only have a minute and a bit, so please do go ahead. Time is of the essence. Please don't let me stop you.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. So basically, we need to understand now, as the ANC, we just have one role from declaring that a new graduates do not need experience. We need to then monitor that process, because it is something that is being hindered by the private sector. We now need to closely monitor that process into ensuring that actually those new graduates do not have to go to jobs without them having experience. So that is basically what the ANC has been able to declare, and it is currently the thing that we're actually working on going to the 2024 national elections, and it is there in our manifesto. So it's just one of the few things we're going to be focusing on.
Njatambo Volsaka of SASCO at Wits University, thank you very much. You'll have a second bite at the cherry when our youth activist Kananela Kwetsa poses her question to you as a representative of the governing party. But let's move swiftly ahead. Nicholas Inyati is the federal leader of the DA youth structure. What is the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition's stance on social protection?
Thank you for having me, and good morning to everyone. The Democratic Alliance has put forward 7 apex priorities, and we believe that these priorities go hand in hand together. One of the priorities speaks about creating 2 million jobs. The other speaks about taking 6 million people out of the poverty line. When we speak about creating 2 million jobs, we actually address the question that many people are asking, the question of experience, the question of availability of internships. And we are actually saying that we are going to create something called a youth unemployment certificate. This youth unemployment certificate is a certificate that is going to be given to unemployed youth. It's going to restrict them or take them away from the restrictive labor laws and regulations that speak about minimum wage and actually exclude young people from opportunities of employment. We also speak about dealing with the race-based policies that are actually chasing away investors from coming to our country and creating jobs. The red tape that is killing businesses. In our manifesto, we speak about, as I've said before, most of these things are interconnected. We speak about addressing the issue of load shedding and water shedding. Someone might think, Nicholas, that does not speak to job. It actually does, because it's one of the #1 pillar of jobs in South Africa. We speak about the racialized policies that exist in South Africa. The thing of equity, for example, if I were to quote from the top of my head. We don't want our policies to speak unto race, but rather our policies when it comes to employment to speak about meritocracy and skills. We also speak about fixing the basic education sector and higher education sector, because you can never address the issue of unemployment or poverty if you do not fix those two factors. But as the Democratic Alliance, we have 7 apex priorities that are all interconnected.
You're out of time. Please finish your point.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll stop there for now.
Let's move swiftly ahead to the EFF Student Command's Ponso Hlongwane. Thank you very much for joining us once more. Please, panelists, if you can keep your microphones off until your chance has arrived. Mr. Hlongwane, please take it away. The EFF, Economic Freedom Fighters, what's your stance on social protection?
No, thank you very much for having us, and I'd like to also greet your viewers. Of course, I think, as you have seen, that many political organizations are actually approaching this issue of social protection as a simplistic thing, because you are dealing with issues because if you were to contextualize it, you will therefore come to understand that the issue of social protection, if you can't deal with the economic system that is currently engulfing South Africa right now, you'll not be able to solve the issues of youth unemployment, because those are some of the symptoms, are not the main problems, but they're some of the symptoms. But as the economic freedom fighters, of course, as you know, we believe in socialism, which says that essentially that from each according to its ability, to each according to its needs. But on youth development, the economic freedom fighters, a manifesto, speaks, speaks unto that, because you'll find that the economic, social, and political upliftment of youth finds resonance in all aspects of our manifesto. This is because under the EFF government, uncompromisingly, the youth will benefit from, South African resources. So we do have quite a number of initiatives that the EFF government will seek to, employ in order to encourage, of course, the participation of businesses, by incentivizing those businesses to encourage youth participation in the economy, by ensuring that those businesses that participate or take our youth and give them the experiences that are necessary, they are incentivized, through taxes and also, through certificate that they will get by virtue of them encouraging the youth or allowing the youth to participate, in their own company. So of course, we don't believe in the issues of experience, which serves as a red tape. And of course, we also put forward that education must be able to provide that someone, when they leave university, they must be fully ready to, for the workplace, which means that we must be able to put into our curriculum the work integrated, learning, so that when you leave the university, you are able to, of course, enter the workplace. And of course, we must remove all the experiences that
Mr. Hlongwane.
needed, of course, or for the entry-level jobs. Of course, we hope that we will be able to ask proper questions so that we're able to deal decisively with these issues, because 2 minutes for the EFF is not enough. As our manifesto deals comprehensively with these issues that we are facing as young people in the country. And of course, there's no any other believable plan, in other organizations, as you see that they are not able to deal with this issue. Of course, the current ANC, which under the ANC government, we have
Mr. Hlongwane, you'll get another chance when the youth activist poses another question, but point is taken. The EFF certainly does have a very, very meaty manifesto. All of the political parties having put forward their manifesto in the run-up to the May 29th election. If you just joined us, the latest edition of the Yes or No online roundtable discussion brought to you by Youth Capital, presented by myself, Nicolaas Bauer. Next in order of representation in Parliament, Andile Jabavu of the United Democratic Movement, 2 seats in Parliament. You represent in the National Assembly. What is the UDM's take on social protection? Mr. Jabavu. Well, it looks as though there's some connectivity issues with Mr. Jabavu. Mr. Jabavu, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, certainly. Go ahead. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Awesome. So the UDM advocates for comprehensive social protection, obviously focusing on areas such as education, employment opportunities, healthcare, housing, and social welfare programs. We basically advocate for youth employment programs, of course, training skills, affordable healthcare, and all these other assistance, social safety, and so on. But however, what I want to emphasize on is the fact that I feel like we're running away from the fact that we are already sitting with the graduated youth in the townships. What's happening is that we are not protecting the youth from the employment sectors. Because what these companies do, they exploit the illegal immigrants in as far as paying them way lower, in order to try and make sure they do not employ the graduates that we have as South Africans. So that we are sitting with something that is called unfair competition, because you're sitting with the South African that understands very well that there is a certain amount of salary that I need to get in order for me to survive. And then you're sitting with an illegal immigrant that is willing to actually take anything in order to survive. So that on its own, we need to deal with that. If we deal with that, then we'll be in a position to actually create the jobs. So UDM stands with young people in as far as making sure that we protect them from that unfair competition. One thing that we do not support is the 350. That is just, it's ridiculous. It's just, a spit on the face for young people. And it really doesn't do anything. Because at that time, we really needed a lifeline more than anything when they introduced this 350, Small businesses were shutting down, a lot of things, young people were suffering. So a lot was happening. When we needed a lifeline, we got a spit on the face. So that is precisely what we believe in the UDM, that we need to protect the young people against this competition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the response there. Moving swiftly along, let's take the ATM's Ms. Kat Moji. She's the member of the National Executive Committee of the African Transformation Movement. What is your party's take on social protection?
So basically, the African Transformation Movement believes in transformation of the township and rural economy to ensure mass economic participation of the citizens. We believe in prioritization of citizens in terms of job opportunities, but the youth in particular. Now, there's a colleague that already highlighted the fact that our biggest challenge, and it's a bone of contention, is the fact that we've got so many unemployed graduates. And the reason for that is that the education system does not provide the education that speaks to the labor market. So continuously, we get a lot of people that have been funded and they have studied and they've completed their degrees, but they cannot even be taken either by the SETAs for in-service training, number one, because of the exclusion. When you're talking about youth that has been registered in universities, and by the time some of them have completed their studies, they're at the age of 35, and this means that some SETAs are going to exclude them. So it means that one cannot get the experiential training, and it means that they're not going to be absorbed. The second one is the education system that does not allow people to study skills training. Everybody is doing business studies and theoretical studies, but we do not have skills training. So therefore, we have created people that rely on job seeking and not the youth that can be able to participate in the space of economy, to be able to also create employment. So basically what we're trying to say as the ATMs, to say that we as a country, we need to invest a lot on the TVET space, because this is where you get the 30% theory and 70% practical. But if you do that, then you will make sure that people are able to get the experiential training even before completing, and you don't have to go, for the in-service and job in-service training and the job shadowing. So basically, we need to have more skilled people, but over and above education, we need to invest in rural areas so that you don't have a lot of people influxing from rural areas to come to the town to the towns to create employment. We need people to be able to create and participate in the economic space wherever they are.
The ATM's Ms. Kat Moji, thank you very much for that. Nice, light, bright and tight, keeping to the time. You'll have a second bite at the cherry in a moment when our youth activist, Kananela Kwetsa, poses her question to you. We've got two more panelists to get through. Ramla Malchas represents the Al Jamar Party. They're, of course, in the National Assembly already with one seat. Ramla, what is your party's approach to social protection?
Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Nicholas, for providing this platform. Our party's stance on social protection is focused on ensuring equal access to basic necessities and promoting the rights of all individuals. We believe in ensuring that safe drinkable water is accessible to everyone without any form of discrimination, safeguarding household food security in both urban and rural areas across the country, removing VAT on essential household items to make them more affordable for everyone, providing free stationery and textbooks at all levels of education, guaranteeing equitable access to vital resources for a dignified life, because people matter more than profits, empowering vulnerable groups, including elderly care, women's safety, youth opportunities, and disability inclusion, promoting socio-economic rights such as education, healthcare, adequate housing, and social security, striving to build a culture of social cohesion and solidarity by rejecting practices of cultural and religious discrimination. These points reflect our commitment to social equity, inclusivity, and the protection of human rights as fundamental aspects of our social protection agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Malchus, representing Al Jamar. Last but not least, Eugene Botha represents the Patriotic Alliance. You're yet to be represented in Parliament, but of course, high hopes of making it into the National Assembly after the May 29th election. What is the Patriotic Alliance's approach to social protection, Mr. Botha?
Thank you, Nicholas. Good morning, panelists. I just want to start because I think the genesis of this conversation is what Advocate Madonsela said. Professor Madonsela said about Section 27 of the Constitution. There's two parts to that. The first part, the introduction, is the state has a duty to create a system that develops the youth and empowers them to earn their own income. And if it cannot do that, then social grants come into the conversation. And what we've seen under the current regime is that these things are siloed. So we have programs like the YES program. It's a wonderful program, but it's separate and distinct from other programs. And what we as the Patriotic Alliance have done is we've looked at the Section 27 holistically and said we need to approach this thing holistically. We can't just give grants because there's a downside to that. If you give people grants and they don't want to work, you've got to give grants with a purpose. The grant has to take that person into a state, a social protection that develops. And we need to get that together because otherwise it's going to fall apart. And the Patriotic Alliance, out of the 5 manifesto points, 3 of them are directed towards this. We spoke about conscription in our manifesto points. Now, people are thinking about apartheid-era conscription. No, we're talking about modern conscription of the youth into a national service where all these seaters and all these funds can be consolidated into an hands-on consolidated space where it is controlled. We've got silos at the moment, things are falling through the cracks, and the youth are suffering as a result of that. Let's consolidate it into a national service. Let's manage and control it through that, and let's make sure all our youth get time in a national service. Now, this is important because Gayton McKenzie wrote a book called Hustler's Bible. It's one of the best-selling books in South Africa. And in that book, he speaks about the necessary discipline and grit. And the national service is designed to ensure that the youth get that discipline and grit in order to succeed in business in South Africa. The other element is obviously beneficiation.
Time, Mr. Botha, please go ahead.
The other element is beneficiation, which localizes production and is obviously going to create a lot of job opportunities. And I'm going to rest there. We'll deal with the rest on the second round. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Botha. If you've just joined us, Youth Capital's Yes or No online roundtable, hosted by myself, Nicholas Bauer. Our special guest is Advocate Professor Thuli Madonsela, a lady that really did not need any introduction at the beginning of this conversation, but you're about to leave us, Advocate Madonsela. Maybe as a parting shot, we've got a question from our online audience. And of course, if you have a question to pose any of the panelists, now is the time to use the online chat on Zoom there to let us know what you would like to hear from the panelists that are currently with us. But we've got a question for you, please, Advocate Madonsela. What are the legal channels for establishing a job guarantee, whereby the government guarantees a job to anyone willing and able to work, essentially to enshrine the right to work in law? Is that possible? And B, is it realistic?
Thank you. What a good question, Nicholas. And to the inquirer, it is possible to enshrine a right to work. In fact, as the Wits group that was involved in influencing the Constitution before I physically became involved, we had suggested the inclusion of the right to work. Unfortunately, it was not successful. But the right to work is a universal right under Article 23 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it's also protected by the Covenants on Economic and Social Rights and by ILO Convention. It says everyone has a right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. That's where social protection. Everyone without any discrimination has a right to equal pay for equal work, and everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration. And this is where I think political parties should be careful. You cannot sign away your fundamental human rights. So when we're talking about youth employment, for example, we're talking about internships possibly for free and at low pay. We're talking about the people who are entering the workplace so that they are given an opportunity to work. To ask people to sign away their right to human dignity, their right to just remuneration with the violation of ILO conventions, would be a violation of the Covenants on Economic and Social Rights and a violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But a political party that wants to do that can, as soon as it comes into power, ask South Africa to recall its signature on some of these conventions and re-enter in those conventions with reservations. But under the current conditions where we haven't put in reservations, you can't ask grown-ups, a highly skilled young person who's a graduate, who has the right skill, but doesn't have a job, to sign away their human right, their fundamental human right, their constitutional right. You can't do that. Change the constitution and withdraw our signature on international human rights. Thank you.
Advocate Professor Thuli Madonsela, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great honor having you, and also a very, very important addition to this conversation. It's a prickly issue, youth unemployment. We live in the most unequal society on the face of the earth. Political parties vying for your votes in the run-up to the May 29th election will try and convince you that they have the solutions. Well, let's hear from our youth activist, Kananelo Kwetsa. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for hosting this roundtable discussion with me. Kananelo, really being young in South Africa is an extreme sport. Let's hand over to you. You can share some of the anecdotes of being a young person with our panelists and pose them a question about why they believe young people should vote for their party. Kananelo, take it away.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Okay, I want to start with the ANC. I'm sorry I didn't get his name. I wanted to ask, right, as a young person who has done everything right, and I'm currently seeking employment in the public sector, I get really frustrated when I see catered deployment taking place, particularly in local municipalities and government institutions. Now, as a young person faced with this challenge, why should I vote for you?
Nyanya Tambo, beg your pardon. Let's give a chance to Mr. Volsaka to respond to that. Nyanya Tambo Volsaka, are you there?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm just sorting out my sound and my video. Okay, thank you so much for the question. So basically, you need to understand something, right? The ANC is actually determined to ensure that we're creating 2.5 million jobs that are going to deliver public goods and services in communities. And this will be done through partnerships with the South African National Defence Force, and this will also cater for unemployed graduates, right? But at the very same time, you need to understand something that not everyone is going to get employed. There are different types of employment. You can't be self-employed. And we're going to be doing this thing through creating an extra 1 million jobs through the local economy. And this thing is going to be supported through the NADA and also the CEDA, which are there to support the youth employment, the youth for self-employment. This is to ensure that we tap into the different spheres of the economy, and we are also able to contribute in different ways into our economy. And the government is actually determined to ensure that we support this, the SMMEs, which is going to be there to create employment. Because if you can look very well at the track record of our SMMEs, you need to ensure that you are having a kitchen, and with that kitchen, you can be able to employ even more people. And those are the people that are not actually recorded into the economy, and which is something that we as the ANC we are going to be which is something we as the ANC are going to be monitoring it more, because we need to ensure that you are having a track record of those people who are actually self-employed, because those people also fall part of our self-employment. And then on the issue of catered deployment, there's a misinterpretation of what we mean by catered deployment. The reason there is what we call catered deployment. When you speak of catered deployment, you are speaking of people who are actually qualified. We're not speaking that we're going to be taking just someone because that person is a comrade, and then we say we're going to give you catered deployment. So on catered deployment, you need to understand it's for people who are going to be there, who are aligning with our ideology, ensuring that we are going to be able to create even more jobs. So by you being put in a public office, you will, as a cadre, you'll be able to understand the policies of the ANC and ensure that you partake in ensuring that we are creating 2.5 million jobs and also creating that extra 1 million job. That is basically by what we mean by cadre employment. So that should be able to encourage you as a young person. Okay, that should encourage you as a young person to vote for the ANC, because through cadre deployment, it's going to ensure that we're creating those 2.5 million jobs and that extra 1 million. And it's also going to be done through SMMEs and also the NATA. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That is, of course, Ntyatyambo Volsaka, WITS South African Students Congress chairperson. Kananelo, your next question is going to be for the official opposition, the Democratic Alliance. Please take it away, Kananelo.
Okay, to the Democratic Alliance, one of the greatest challenges in our education system is that it is a little outdated and it glances over very essential skills such as your digital skills, and so which is a really core component in a work setting. So I wanted to ask, with this challenge that we as young people are faced with, particularly with us moving into the fourth industrial revolution, why should we as young people vote for you?
Mr. Inyati, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Kananelo. I think perhaps I must reassure you that under a DA government, cadre deployment will be criminalized. It will not be practiced. Anyone or any party that tries to practice it will go to prison, because it excludes people like yourself who are incompetent and who are not part of any political party. So be rest assured that under us, we will not have such a policy. To answer your question, I think the biggest mistake that many governments do is wanting to fix it at the late stage. The late stage is wanting to fix it at university level. We can never fix the issue of skills at institutions of higher learning. This starts at basic education level. And as the Democratic Alliance will speak about creating an environment where Nicholas, born in rural Mthatha, can have an opportunity to go to a public school, a public primary school, with having the proper support, having recreational centers even in the community, having nutrition. And when they go to high school, there must be education already at the high school to say, which subjects are you choosing that are going to propel your future? We can never fix the challenge of skills or digital training without actually fixing basic education. And as the Democratic Alliance speak about tripling the number of pupils that can read from grade 6, we speak about transforming our basic education sector at the high school level with the skills that are taught there and introducing ITC. And secondly, when you speak about the higher education sector, let's not only just concentrate on universities, but universities, FET colleges, and TVET colleges. If we can be able to bring back the dignity of TVET and FET colleges, we'll be able to have more people coming into the sector. And most importantly, oh, it's fine.
Thank you very much for that. That is the DA Youth Federal Chairperson, Nicholas Inyati. Kananelo, up next is the Economic Freedom Fighters. What's your question for the Red Berets?
Hello again. So I got accepted in Nelson Mandela University, right? And I also got NSFAS acceptance. But then within the first year of my studies, the decision for NSFAS was revoked. It said that I had surpassed the N+2 years rule, right? And I am currently owing the institution close to 170,000, and I still cannot get my certificate. So now with the, and I know I'm not the only person who's actually faced with, financial exclusion, especially in institutions of higher learning. So I want to ask, why should we vote for you?
Your 2 minutes starts now, Mr. Hlongwane.
No, thank you very much. I think we must take 1 minute from the ANC, so that we can have 3 minutes, because they don't have any believable, plan for South Africans. But to answer your question, it's, we have emphasized this point, and in Parliament we have passed, the private members' bill, which seeks to clear all historic debts of students, because we are under the impression that the issue of historic debt is a fundamental problem. And people don't get to acknowledge that. They only approach it at a simplistic level, just like the ANC, because it therefore not only deprives you of a certificate, but it deprives you of your livelihood, because if you're owing the university, you can't get an apartment because you are reflected as a person who cannot pay their debt. You can't get an apartment, you can't be able to get a car. You know, there are certain jobs that says you need to have your own car. So essentially, this issue of historic debt disrupt your entire life. You know, for the next the 20 years of your life, you are trying to remedy that particular situation. Like, for example, as you mentioned, 100 and something thousand is too much. You know, you're not going to be able to pay it because of you are also underpaid. You know, when you get to find your job, and you can't even find the job. If you are lucky, then you get the job, and then you are struggle to to be able to pay back that debt. So the EFF will clear all historic debt because we believe in free education. Government must be able to collect the revenue or the tax so that we are able to fund that free education, so that everybody, it must be based on your capabilities and not on your financial status that you will be able to participate in academic activities. So under the EFF government, rest assured that all historic debt will be cleared, and NSFAS will be an institution that is effective and
Mr. Hlongwane.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hlongwane. I appreciate it. Colonel, your next question to the United Democratic Movement.
Okay, so most decision makers are over the youth age, and as a result, they don't relate to our experiences, and they don't even make space for us. So now, with that in mind, I wanted to ask, why should we as young people vote for you?
Mr. Jabavu, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I missed the first part, but I got the gist of the question. But just to answer the part that I've heard, one thing that we need to know and understand is that if we do not invest in young people, because eventually the young people that we are investing in right now are going to grow into citizens, and then we'll have to invest on another young people that are coming. So that I think that's mainly part of the reason why right now we are talking about the young people, because we are trying to make sure that we've got a generation that is progressive. So as the UDM, we focus more on young people because we know and understand that we are building the leaders of tomorrow. We focus more on young people because we know and understand that we are building entrepreneurs who are going to create employment for older people and for younger people as well. We focus more on young people because we know and understand very well that these are the people who are going to make sure that our kids and the next generation is actually in a very safe environment. So I think it's not necessarily a matter of choosing a certain type of age, a certain group of age. It's more like creating the future for the country. So we are basically focusing on the future, so that we know that in 2024, Andile Jabavu, who's 20 years, for example, right now, when he's 40, he will be living in a country that is.
Well, what a pity. We seem to have lost connection there with Mr. Jabavu. Hopefully we'll be able to hear from him again. There are questions coming in thick and fast on our chat in this particular Zoom room. Hopefully, parties, if you can spare us a minute just at the end of this round, we'll pose these questions to you and then hopefully be able to get your responses. But Kananelo, let's move swiftly ahead to Ms. Kat Moji from the African Transformation Movement. What's your question for the ATM?
Yes, my question to the ATM is, with regard to the fact that the cost of living is currently very expensive and also looking for work is a burden, some state-led work readiness programs are supposed to help us access the labor market, but they have a basic salary that doesn't cover transport, and it doesn't help us young people meet our daily necessities like food and toiletries. So now with that in mind, I wanted to ask, why should we as young people vote for you?
First of all, the ATM has got the youngest leader in parliament, President Vuyo Zungula. And this is giving confidence to the youth of South Africa to say that we are a willing party to allow young people to be in the position of decision making. I mean, we have spoken about infrastructure development, and if you talk about that, then you are supposed to be having people in the country that are able to study and fix our infrastructure. The reason as to why people struggle to go to work is because transportation such as your trains are no longer in use, and we've got Transnet in tatters. So if we were to invest in education that is going to incapacitate young people with skills, then it would mean that they are the ones going to fix infrastructure, and therefore it'll be easy for them to get into the labor market, because we see the country every other time getting people from outside countries to come with a scarce skill that we do not have in South Africa. So the ATM wants to invest in the young people's education so that young people are more skill-based in terms of education. And the second one is a prioritization of entry-level jobs. We cannot have so many foreign nationals, illegal immigrants, if you want to say, that are in the space competing with us. Yes, we know that they're exploited in the space, but we are supposed to be prioritizing South African citizens, and in particular, the young people of South Africa, to be the ones who are in restaurants, who are petrol attendants, and all the labor markets, all the entry-level jobs, so that the young people can be the ones who are active in that space. They need to be protected from scams, from things like, debts, and other issues that adversely affect people's well-being. Because of that destruction, then you see youth relying on substance abuse because of the anxiety that have already been able to. So the ATM is saying that when you give us a chance, we will be able to implement, especially starting from the education that will be learning, so that we can improve the infrastructure, and therefore everybody can be allowed to get to work in a transport mode that is going to be affordable to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, excellent timekeeping there. 2 minutes on the dot. Kananelo, we've got 2 more parties left here. Ms. Malchus of Al Jama-ah, what is your question for the Al Jama-ah representative? Kananelo?
Yes, I guess it has been reiterated a lot by the various political parties that there's a great skill shortage for young people, right? And our accessing markets, our accessing the workplace because of our lack of experience. So now, one of the big challenges that we as young people face is that employers are less willing to hire young people compared to older groups with work experience. So we as young people, how are we supposed to gain experience and even be as productive and proactive as we want to be in the economic sector? And with that in mind, why should we as young people vote for you?
Thank you, Ms. Kananelo. We all know how the current government operates on a nepotistic basis that hinders the youth access to its resources thoroughly. This means that the youth is not given full access, no effort is made to build, educate, or prepare the youth for what lies in their hands. While the Al Jama-ah continuously creates platforms for such problems to be addressed by and for the youth, we have youth indabas or youth conferences that are accessible to any youth person. These are platforms where the youth is trained, nurtured, and empowered to be the much needed change in our country. A platform where the youth becomes less dependent on government and ensures accountability of government surrounding their rights, but further platforms where issues surrounding them are addressed and sustainable solutions are secured, to ensure our voices are heard on all 3 tiers of the government. I mean, this is something that I also have experienced within the party. Al Jama-ah also aims to promote enabling legislation to support, mentor, and coach young entrepreneurs in small, medium, middle agricultural and manufacturing sectors. In conclusion, the future of the country which lies within the youth's hands, Al Jama-ah aims to focus and polish it more, enabling us to acquire skills. Not everybody gives its youth the opportunity to be helped and shine.
Thank you, Ms. Malchus. Last but not least, certainly not least, Kanelele Kwetsa, what is your question for the Patriotic Alliance? Eugene Burta patiently standing by there.
Yes, for Eugene, I would like to reiterate the question that I actually asked to the DA, especially regarding our curriculum and the shortage in digital skills across our curricula, particularly for those who are now entering the workplace. Because I have seen, particularly for me personally, living in a rural area, we currently have interns here at work who literally don't know how to even use Microsoft Office. And this is the challenge that I believe that we in the outskirts, this is a challenge that I believe we are faced with a lot in the outskirts. So I wanted to ask Eugene, why then should we vote for him, for his party? Sorry.
Kananela, thank you. You're right. You're 100% right. We're still running an education system that's based on almost agriculture and manufacture. The education system needs to be updated rapidly. You know, I'm listening to my colleagues and I'm hearing things like cadre deployment and believable policies, but the youth are in a crisis. I don't know if everybody understands this. The unemployment at 60% isn't a joke. It's not ideological. It is a factual crisis. We need to take immediate action. Illegal foreigners who are occupying jobs are occupying youth jobs. The law protects the youth against that. That must be enforced immediately. Somebody must get into government and use the power of government to enforce the law, to stop illegal foreigners from taking these jobs. The army, the national service conscription is something that can be actively and aggressively put into place and developed. The educational changes that you're talking about to bring in software or IT skills are critical. We're falling behind the world. India's economy is growing at a rapid rate because they invested in IT skills 10 years ago. It's not too late for South Africa, but we need to take action. We cannot sit here and discuss ideology and believable plans and 7 policy. We've got to agree on a holistic approach where we consolidate our actions into one achievable goal and really go for that, because at 60% unemployment, the youth cannot wait anymore. They cannot wait for us to find each other. We've got to agree on implementable, actionable plans that we can take forward. And that is why you need to vote for the Patriotic Alliance. We're done talking, we're done theorizing. All the policies have been written. It's now time for action, and that's what we're here to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Botha, and of course, thank you very much, Kananela Kwetsa. It's been an honor, sharing this platform with you as the youth activist at Youth Capital. Political parties, grant us this indulgence. We're going to give you one question each from the people that are watching this webinar. You have 1 minute. We're going to keep it to 1 minute because we've already gone over time. And of course, you need to hit the campaign trail and convince us to vote for you come the May 29th election. So, Mr. Volsaka, the representative of the South African Students' Congress at WITS, Njantambo Volsaka, we've got a question for you on the Zoom chat. With the ANC's plan to create jobs, is there a plan to look at the salaries and wages currently offered, especially at an internship level? Mr. Volsaka, you have 1 minute to tell us what the ANC's approach is to stipends and wages of first-time employment opportunities. Mr. Volsaka, are you there? All right. If he's missing the bite at the cherry, I hope that Nicholas Inyati is still with us, the official opposition's federal youth.
I'm back.
Okay, there we go. Mr. Volsaka, go right ahead. What is the ANC's response to the stipends and the wages that are offered at an internship and first opportunity level? There's some criticism that it's just simply too low. 1 minute from SASCO, by extension the ANC, please.
Thank you so much for the platform. So basically, we need to understand that with the cost of living that keeps on increasing every now and then, as the ANC, why indeed looking at increasing the minimum wage, which is currently sitting at 27.58, but now we need to ensure that we match the minimum wage with the cost of living. That is currently what we're looking at in terms of the salaries. But now when it comes to the stipends currently on government level, you currently end at around at least 6,573. And there's something we need to understand that with serving public goods and services, there's no profit that is being gained. So that makes it difficult for those internship salaries to be increased or these stipends to be increased. So we're currently not looking at anything at this point when it comes to the stipends that are currently sitting at 6,573, because we do believe that they are still at least above the minimum wage of South Africa, and they can be able to afford at least the basic living of one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vilsaka, keeping it light, bright, and tight. Remember, Mr. Nyati, the DA Federal Youth Leader, you represent the official opposition. You've got a minute to answer this question, please. In 2019, the ANC scored 57.5% of the vote. The Democratic Alliance in the 21% region. Now, there was a 11.7 million voters aged between 18 to 39. That's an extremely big voting bloc. And I want to know what the Democratic Alliance, the question from the audience is, what is the Democratic Alliance doing in terms of directly speaking to that large voting bloc, the largest voting bloc in South Africa, really?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us. I think as the Democratic Alliance, for the first time, we actually have more than a manifesto. We have a blueprint that was given to us by majority South Africans. We are one of the only few parties that have a footprint everywhere in South Africa, rural areas and urban areas. So our manifesto directly speaks to those 11 point something million individuals who did not participate or who are registered to vote in the coming election. I think young people, for the first time in a very long time, understand that in 1994 we might have voted for our freedom, but in 2024 young people have to come together and vote for their survival, and hence our manifesto is called the Rescue Plan for South Africa. So I think having or attending this platform is one of the different ways that we are reaching out to an audience that would not necessarily would have had a contact with. And I believe that young people must go and read the DA's plan to rescue South Africa, because I believe it's one of the most tried and well-researched plans that can take this country forward.
Thank you very much for your time, Nicholas Nyati. Moving swiftly ahead, EFF Student Command, Ponso Hlongwane. There's a talk about a highway with this question from the audience. What is the EFF strategy for making the highway to employment for young people not full of potholes? So in other words, what are you doing to make sure that public employment programs such as the Youth Employment Service actually leads to a career opportunity and not just providing temporary employment? What is the EFF doing to ensure that the first employment opportunity actually leads to a career for a young person?
No, thank you very much for that question. And of course, we sometimes have our reservations when it comes to these issues of internships and all those that, because you find that we employ young people to do a job of someone that could have been employed, on a full-time basis, so that we can just cut the cost. You see, you employ someone, you are going to pay 30,000, but you just want to take the youth, you give them 5,000 as a stipend. That is very problematic. So as the EFF, of course, we're going to make sure that young people who get to participate in those programs, they get guaranteed, once you get that internship, you must be guaranteed that you are going to get employment, because you must not be exploited in the name of getting experience, because now every year we're going to change these young people because we just want to save the cost, because some of these people are not genuine in their approach. They just want to save the cost. They take young people and they put them there. So as the EFF will make sure that that is a guaranteed job, so that young people don't just come and be exploited and they're taken out. Thanks.
EFF Students Command's Ponso Hlongwane. Andile Jabavu of the United Democratic Movement. You're, of course, the Gauteng chairperson, a young person in a senior role within your party. And we've got the question in from Ayanda Shizi Wigzel. She wants to know, what is the UDM stance on a universal basic income grant, especially for young people?
So thank you very much for that question. So what we believe in is the fact that when it comes to grants for young people, they need to be precise. They need to speak to the education. They need to speak to the employment opportunity. they really need to speak to the progress as opposed to just giving young people 350, for example, without really knowing what is it that you are investing, what is the direction of the grant. So as the UDM, what we want to do is to make sure that we create SETA banks where the loans will be available for young people to actually be self-employed and open businesses. We want to create something that is called township economy. Township economy means that all the spaza shops need to be owned by South Africans. In order for us to make sure that works, we need to have initiatives where young people can be supported to own those spaza shops, your saloons and everything, so that we can speak of the concept of township economy being controlled by young people. Right now, that is not the case. In the township, you only find young people sitting in the corners. So that's what we want to change in order to make sure that young people are progressive. So in as much as, we understand that young people want money in order to have these things, but the money needs to be channeled into a certain direction and progress. Education, employment opportunity, wealth, and business opportunities. So that's what we believe as UDM, that the grant needs to go to a certain direction: education, employment, and business opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Ndile Jabavu, the UDM representative on this panel. We've got a handful of parties left. Thank you very much for staying with us. African Transformation Movement next, Ms. Kat Moji. We've got a question here from Andani Ratsivumo. If the ANC doesn't win the election and we end up having a coalition government, what is the ATM stance on NAFSAS and SASSA services going into the future? There's a worry that a coalition government may terminate these services. What's the ATM's response to that? What's the ATM's approach to NAFSAS and SASSA?
First of all, the ATM is open to any kind of coalition, but that discussion can only take place after the elections. We are not going to preempt the kind of coalition that we're going to have, but we are open to negotiating and for the progression of the country. So on the issue of NSFAS, first of all, you need to get rid of the minister, Blade Nzimande, the Minister of Department of Higher Education, get rid of Angie Motshekga, the Minister of Basic Education, so that you can see progress in that space. NSFAS has historically been exploiting students, because even this year, in the year of 2024, there's so many service providers that when the Treasury gives funding, most of the funding that is going to the student is not going to reach the student because of the service providers that need to benefit out of that. And it is because the department has allowed so many of those role players to come in and take whatever that was supposed to be meant for the student. So first of all, you need to change all of that, but get rid of historic debts, because there's no way that students can be able to get into the labor market, as one of the colleagues was indicating about you having a debt and not being able to even purchase a car or an apartment. So get rid of that. But with SASSA grants, I want to believe that SASSA grants right now, at a time where cost of living is too high, it is needed. But we are also living in a society where, a substance abuse is something that is very normal. So if you're going to just continue giving people money and then they go and purchase drugs, because we've got open borders, everybody can access, there's human trafficking, there's so many things that is happening, and you give people money just to go and spend on alcohol and drugs, then it's not going to make sense. So we believe as the ATM that social grants need to be there to encourage people to start or having their own income, not just for them to just get hands out and assistance from the government without them pulling any effort towards their livelihood. So we believe in social grants, but they need to be monitored, and then there needs to be a regulation of how much the cost of living is at currently before you can say it's going to be 350. So we are open to that, but we're saying that it needs to be regulated, it needs to be watched, and NSFAS needs to get rid of all the historic debts.
Thank you very much. From the ATM there, Ms. Kat Moji, a National Executive Committee member of the African Transformation Movement. Two more to go. Ramna Malchas of Al Jama'ah. We've got a question here from Luhleli Dinwao. It's concerning how much youth representation is lacking in Parliament. Your party only has one seat, the Al Jama'ah. Remains to be seen how many seats you'll have after the May election. But the question is, what are political parties doing, yours in particular, to ensure that there's youth representation among your elected officials?
First of all, we need more young people within the cabinet of South Africa. We need more young people who are going to address the problems that we are facing, more young people who also have experienced or experiencing the challenges that the youth is experiencing in South Africa. So Al Jama does have platforms. Actually, in the coalition last year, we had the most young people representing the party. We also ensure that more young people are exposed within the political space, because that's where you gain experience, that's where you gain skills that will foster you to be within it. Also, among that, the party also is planning on doing workshops that will skill and polish more skills to young people. We do need more people, young people actually, interested in politics, because now with what's happening within the country, more young people are dissociating from politics because they believe that it is unfair onto them. So the party does guarantee fairness within the youth. Yes. Thank you.
Malchus, thank you very much. Eugene Botha, Patriotic Alliance, not represented in the National Assembly as of yet. That's why we've left you to last. You don't have current representation, but say you do have representation. The question online is the following. If you were able to implement your policies, Ambani Mulawi wants to know, what would your policy be in terms of financing young people's small businesses started by young people?
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, I think this really goes to what we're talking about in terms of BEE. The BEE systems in place currently are not correct. They're not actually getting to where they need to get to. In fact, it blows my mind that we're supporting a system that promotes Black ownership of only 26%. And the Patriotic Alliance wants to set up a fund. So there's so much, it's billions of rands going into BEE as it is currently. Let's redirect that into a centralized fund, and let's get that fund allocated towards youth and development businesses. Because the economy of South Africa needs to grow. You know, we can talk about jobs all we want, but if there aren't jobs, if our economy is stuck at growing at 0.9% per annum, but there's 3% in new entrants into the job market, we're going to have this issue forever. So we feel that we need to rapidly unbundle the disaster that is the implemented structure of BEE as it is now, restructure it to benefit 100% Black-owned companies, and specifically the youth, really throw money at them and develop them. You know, if you look at those incubation hubs, the businesses that are in those incubation hubs are succeeding at a rate of 80%. So in other words, if you look at SMEs, the strategy or the reporting is 80% of SMEs fail after 3 years. But incubated companies, only 20% fail after 3 years. So there's a model in place already. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to channel the funds in the right direction and make sure that those 100% Black-owned and specifically youth-owned companies receive the benefits of those resources and skills that are already in place. That's our view. Thank you.
Eugene Botha, I thank you for that. And I thank you to every single one of our panelists. This has been a bumper edition of the Youth Capital online roundtable discussion. We had a brilliant input from Thuli Madonsela, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, the former public protector, current professor at Stellenbosch University. We're of course joined by a host of panelists there, political parties vying for your vote as a young person come May the 29th election. I want to thank them in order of representation in Parliament. Ndacha Tambo Volsaka, Wits Sasko chairperson, representative of the ANC, Nicholas Inyati of the Democratic Alliance, the EFF Student Commands, Ponzo Hlongwane, Of course, joining us alongside Andile Jabavu from the United Democratic Movement. We just heard from Kat Mochi from the African Transformation Movement, followed by Ramla Malchas from Al Jamaa, and of course, Eugene Buerta. Now we want to hear from you. Remember, you can reach out to us during the course of not only these broadcasts, but also in between them. Do reach out to us on our social media platforms. A big thank you to Kananelo Kwetsa. She, of course, hosted this as a youth activist at Youth Capital alongside me, Nicolaus Bauer. And of course, also to the people that make this possible in the background, Fense Malache and Clotilda Angelucci. Without your hard work, this simply would not happen. We'll join you for the next look at what political parties are doing for young people in this election cycle. May 29th is Judgment Day, not only for young people, but for the rest of South Africa, as political parties are going to be hoping to get your vote. Who are you going to give it to? Stay tuned to our next edition of the Yes or No vodcast, this online roundtable discussion hosted by Youth Capital. It's our way of advocating for the continuation of the Youth Employment Service in the presidency. Studies have consistently shown that young people who have that first employment opportunity have that much more greater chance of continuing into a successful career. Thank you for your time. I'm Nicolaus Bauer. I can't wait to see you again.